In the late 1960s, the Royal Navy faced a crisis that could have changed the course of naval aviation forever. Post-war Britain was grappling with severe budget constraints, and ambitious defense projects were being slashed across the board. Among the most devastating cancellations was the ZA1 supercarrier program, a fleet of massive ships intended to project Britain's power globally. Without these carriers, the Royal Navy was left with a stark choice: retire from modern naval aviation or find a way to fight on smaller, lighter ships. It was in this climate of austerity and urgency that the concept of a vertical short takeoff and landing fighter gained traction. Britain needed an aircraft that could operate from small carriers, yet still delivered the firepower and agility of a conventional jet. Engineers turned to the Hawker Siddeley P-1127, an experimental jet with a radical idea. Use vectored thrust from a single engine to take off vertically, hover, and land almost anywhere. This early prototype looked unconventional, almost alien, but its potential was undeniable. And yet, as the first tests rolled out, doubts abounded. Could such a machine survive real combat? Could it outperform conventional fighters in the heat of battle? Despite skepticism, development pressed on. By the early 1970s, the Harrier was operational, and the Royal Navy began planning a naval variant, Sea Harrier. This aircraft incorporated a longer fuselage to accommodate the Blue Fox radar, a raised cockpit for maximum visibility, and structural enhancements to withstand the harsh sea environment. Every design choice reflected necessity. Carriers were small, pilots had to spot enemy aircraft at extreme distances, and every kilogram of weight mattered. This Sea Harrier represented more than technology. It was Britain's defiance in the face of constraints. When placed on the deck of an Invincible-class light carrier, it looked almost fragile, a bird perched on the edge of the unknown. But beneath its sleek lines, it carried a lethal promise. Its Rolls-Royce Pegasus engine allowed vertical takeoffs, rapid acceleration, and the ability to pivot midair capabilities that would soon turn the tide of an unexpected war in the South Atlantic. As engineers and pilots worked tirelessly to refine the Sea Harrier, they faced unforeseen challenges. Turbulence during vertical takeoffs could throw even the most experienced pilot off balance. And the Blue Fox radar, still in early development, sometimes failed to lock on at extreme angles. It was a race against time. Britain's military planners feared that if conflict erupted before the Sea Harrier was fully ready, the Royal Navy could face catastrophe. Yet even in these uncertain days, a small cadre of pilots believed they were flying the future, even if no one else did. Then, on the horizon of political tension in 1982, whispers of conflict began to stir in the South Atlantic. The Falkland Islands, a distant and seemingly minor British outpost, had long been a point of contention with Argentina. Nobody imagined that this remote territory would become the stage for a war that would test every innovation, every pilot, and every strategy the Royal Navy had painstakingly developed. By the late 1970s, the Sea Harrier was officially deployed. The first squadrons trained in England, learning the nuances of STOL operations and adapting to the demands of limited-deck carriers. Pilots practiced vertical landings on mock-ups of carrier decks, hovered over simulated enemy positions, and conducted night-flying exercises that would prepare them for the unpredictable conditions of combat. Each maneuver, each simulation, added layers of confidence but also highlighted the razor-thin margin for error. A single miscalculation in a vertical landing could destroy both pilot and aircraft. Among these pioneers were men who would later become legends. Lieutenant Commander Nigel Sharkey Ward stood at the forefront, a veteran with the calm precision of a master strategist. Sharkey embodied the fusion of human skill and cutting-edge technology. He not only trained pilots, but helped refine operational doctrine, ensuring that every Sea Harrier squadron could fight cohesively, even when outnumbered. And yet, despite all preparation, there was an unspoken tension. No pilot could truly know how the Sea Harrier would perform against real enemies in hostile skies, far from the safety of home waters. Even as the Sea Harrier matured, political and military analysts doubted its effectiveness. How could a fleet of small jets on small carriers hope to challenge larger, more conventional air forces? Could they survive missile attacks, high-speed dogfights, and the chaos of wartime conditions? These questions hung over every flight, every test sortie, and in quiet moments on the deck of HMS Invincible, pilots would glance across the waves, wondering if they would ever get a chance to prove their aircraft in battle or if their innovations would die quietly on the drawing board. By the end of the decade, the Sea Harrier was ready as any aircraft can be before facing the crucible of war. The combination of radar-guided targeting AIM-9L Sidewinder missiles and unprecedented maneuverability had created a machine capable of reshaping naval air combat. But technology alone does not win battles. It was the men who flew these jets, who understood their limitations and trusted their instincts, who would determine whether the Sea Harrier would be a footnote in history or the spearhead of a remarkable military campaign. And as the British naval planners scanned intelligence reports in early 1982, they could not have known how soon that test would come. The Falklands were distant, small, and seemingly insignificant, but a single miscalculation would ignite a war, and the Sea Harrier would find itself at the center of a struggle that would define an era of modern naval aviation. If you enjoy following these incredible historical stories and want to see how innovation meets courage, please click the subscribe button and like the video. It helps more people discover these hidden chapters of history. By the spring of 1982, tensions between Britain and Argentina over the Falkland Islands had reached a boiling point. The remote archipelago in the South Atlantic, home to only a few thousand civilians, suddenly became the epicenter of international attention. When Argentine forces invaded on the 2nd of April, Britain's response had to be swift, precise, and decisive. The Royal Navy prepared to sail half a world away, knowing that every decision would be scrutinized and that failure was not an option. Among those at the forefront of this response was Lieutenant Commander Nigel Sharkey Ward, a man of calm authority and exacting standards. Sharkey had spent years preparing the Royal Navy for a conflict that no one expected would arrive so soon. He had led the Sea Harrier program since the mid-1970s, transforming an experimental jet into a finely tuned weapon. But theory and training were not the same as reality. Sharkey understood that the stakes had escalated from exercises and simulations to life-and-death battles over 1,000 miles from home. The task facing Sharkey and his fellow pilots was daunting. Britain could deploy just 20 Sea Harriers, compared to over 100 Argentine combat aircraft, including Skyhawks, Daggers, and Mirages. The British jets were technologically advanced, but vastly outnumbered. Every sortie would be a high-stakes gamble with survival depending on a combination of pilot skill, radar advantage, missile capability, and nerve. The very thought of facing multiple enemy jets at once left even the most experienced officers uneasy. As the British fleet set sail, Sharkey drilled his pilots in tactics that could exploit the Sea Harrier's strengths. They practiced low-level approaches over the ocean, evasive maneuvers against radar-guided missiles, and rapid vertical takeoffs from limited carrier decks. Night flying became a central component of training, as pilots anticipated the unpredictability of Argentine attacks under the cover of darkness. Every detail was scrutinized. Paint colors were adjusted for low visibility. Cockpit displays were refined, and weapon systems were tested to their limits. Yet even with meticulous preparation, there was an air of uncertainty. The pilots could train endlessly, but no simulation could replicate the stress of being hunted by an enemy determined to shoot them down. The South Atlantic, with its unpredictable weather and vast distances, presented challenges that could render even the most advanced technology useless. And as the fleet approached the Falklands, there was one persistent, haunting question. Would 20 Sea Harriers be enough to protect the ships, the troops, and themselves against overwhelming numbers? The early days of the conflict tested every lesson Sharkey had taught. On the 1st of May 1982, the first air-to-air engagements began. Argentine jets, flying in coordinated formations, sought to establish air superiority. British pilots, however, relied on the Sea Harrier's radar and maneuverability to anticipate attacks, often appearing from unexpected angles and striking before the enemy could react. Every sortie was a delicate dance, a blend of technology, instinct, and daring. Despite their skill, the pilots quickly learned that courage alone was not sufficient. Operational limitations, such as limited fuel for high-speed interceptions and the challenges of coordinating with surface forces, meant that even the smallest error could have catastrophic consequences. Sharkey led by example, flying missions alongside his men, demonstrating not only technical mastery, but also calm under fire. His leadership became a psychological anchor. Knowing he was in the air alongside them gave the pilots the confidence to press their advantage, even when outnumbered. Meanwhile, the Argentine pilots, unaware of the full capabilities of the Sea Harrier, pressed attacks relentlessly. The Falklands geography forced extended flight times for Argentine aircraft, leaving them vulnerable during return trips to the mainland. They carried bombs, designed for larger targets. But against small, moving ships, accuracy suffered. Each encounter highlighted the asymmetric advantages the Sea Harrier could exploit. Rapid acceleration, tight turning radius, and the all-aspect AIM-9L Sidewinder missile that could lock on from unexpected angles. For the British forces, every day brought new challenges. The journey across the South Atlantic tested morale, endurance, and the limits of logistical planning. Crew members on ships slept in shifts, maintaining radar watch and preparing for potential air attacks at a moment's notice. For the Sea Harrier pilots, the tension was palpable. They knew that in any encounter, the odds were stacked against them. Yet they also knew that with precision, strategy, and trust in one another, the impossible could become possible. Then, as the first real engagements unfolded, something extraordinary happened. The Sea Harriers began to assert dominance over the skies. Argentine pilots, skilled and courageous, faced a foe whose technology, preparation, and teamwork combined in ways they had never anticipated. And while the British jets flew sorties over San Carlos, Argentine forces launched attacks against the landing zones, aiming to disrupt the amphibious operations. Every dogfight, every interception, held the potential for either victory or disaster. Sharkey's own skill was soon to be tested in ways that would define his legacy. The precise moment when a single decision in the cockpit could save his wingman or cost them their lives was approaching. And as he prepared for the next patrol, he had to ask himself, could training and technology truly overcome the sheer weight of numbers? Or would the Sea Harrier's first test in battle become their last? The stage was set. Across the South Atlantic, two nations converged on a remote chain of islands, each pilot carrying not just weapons, but the fate of men, ships, and an entire campaign. The Sea Harriers, once a solution to budget constraints, were about to prove whether innovation and courage could rewrite the rules of aerial warfare. By early May 1982, the British task force had reached the waters surrounding the Falklands. For Lieutenant Commander Nigel "Sharkey" Ward and his fellow Sea Harrier pilots, theory and training were about to collide with the unforgiving reality of combat. The South Atlantic, vast and unpredictable, became the arena for a struggle where skill, courage, and technology would face the ultimate test. The first day of air-to-air engagements arrived with a tension that could be cut with a knife. Argentine aircraft, primarily Skyhawks, Daggers, and a handful of Mirage fighters, sought to strike the landing zones and cripple the fleet. The Sea Harriers, though vastly outnumbered, were ready. Utilizing the Blue Fox radar and AIM-9L Sidewinder missiles, the British pilots struck swiftly, intercepting enemy formations before they could release their ordnance. Within hours, 3 Argentine planes were downed without a single Sea Harrier lost. Victory, however, was only the beginning. The pilots quickly realized that air superiority was fragile. Fuel limitations meant that each sortie had to be calculated to the minute. One misstep in timing could strand a jet over the ocean, leaving it and its pilot exposed. The Argentine Air Force, while technologically inferior in this conflict, was relentless and willing to press attacks in waves. The Sea Harrier's advantage was speed and maneuverability, but every engagement was a high-stakes game where the margin for error was rare. The Falklands geography added another layer of danger. Low-lying clouds, sudden gusts of wind, and the ever-present risk of misjudging altitude above the waves forced pilots to rely on instinct honed through countless hours of training. Every maneuver became a test of precision, every missile a gamble. And yet, despite the pressure, the British pilots adapted quickly, using tactics that combined vertical takeoffs, sudden dives, and unpredictable attack angles. Their enemies were skilled, but the Sea Harrier's capabilities and the pilot's ingenuity gave them a deadly edge. As British forces landed at San Carlos, Argentine attacks intensified. Bombs rained down on the landing beaches, sinking 3 ships and damaging 8 others. The Sea Harriers, constantly on patrol, had to intercept while managing fuel, ammunition, and pilot fatigue. The reality of war was immediate. Even the most advanced technology could not fully mitigate the chaos of battle. Yet the pilots pressed on, each engagement a ballet of life, death, and split-second decisions. Sharkey Ward's own role in these encounters exemplified the blend of leadership, experience, and courage required to succeed. Leading by example, he flew multiple sorties per day, coordinating with wingmen to intercept enemy formations. The AIM-9L Sidewinder missile, capable of locking onto targets from any angle, proved decisive. 16 of the 20 Argentine aircraft shot down by Sea Harriers during the conflict fell to this technology, a testament to the combination of innovation and human skill. But even with technological superiority, the battles were harrowing. A single mistake misjudging speed, altitude, or positioning could prove fatal. Pilots faced attacks from multiple directions, often relying on split-second reflexes and trust in their radar to survive. Meanwhile, Argentine pilots, flying tired aircraft from distant airfields, demonstrated resilience and determination that made each engagement unpredictable. Every day brought a new challenge, a fresh test of endurance and nerve, and the knowledge that a single error could cost a life. The air war also highlighted the human dimension of naval aviation. Pilots who were once confined to simulations and training now faced the raw intensity of combat. The constant rotation of sorties pushed them to the limits of physical and mental endurance. On-deck crews watched anxiously as jets took off and returned, knowing that each mission could be their comrade's last. Every successful interception was a victory. Every narrow escape a reminder of the fragility of life and war. By mid-May, the Sea Harrier squadrons had established a reputation that would echo through military history. They were fewer in number, but unmatched in skill and efficiency. Every kill, every evasion, every tactical maneuver reinforced the lesson that preparation, innovation, and bravery could overcome even overwhelming odds. Yet the war was far from over. Argentine forces remained a constant threat, and each engagement carried the looming possibility that one mission could tip the balance of the entire campaign. Throughout these operations, morale and focus were critical. Pilots had to manage exhaustion while maintaining peak performance, often flying multiple missions per day. The small victories of intercepting enemy aircraft were tempered by the ongoing threat to landing forces and ships below. Coordination between air and naval units was essential, and the Sea Harrier's versatility allowed it to fill multiple roles: air superiority, fleet defense, and reconnaissance, blurring the lines between fighter, interceptor, and guardian of the task force. Sharkey and his wingmen soon discovered that true mastery was not just about technology or training. It was about anticipation. They had to read enemy movements, predict attacks, and react faster than anyone else in the sky. In this deadly chess game, a single mistake could be catastrophic, but a single clever maneuver could change the course of the battle. And as the pilots faced waves of attackers, one pressing question remained. How long could 20 jets hold the skies against relentless enemy forces? The Sea Harrier's performance during the Falklands conflict became a legend, demonstrating that numbers alone do not determine victory. Skill, technology, and strategy could decisively tilt the balance. Yet even in the midst of triumph, tension remained palpable. Pilots knew that another mission could be the one that tested every ounce of their courage and ingenuity. If you've been captivated by this incredible story of courage and innovation, don't forget to click the subscribe button and like the video. It helps more people discover these amazing chapters of history and support future content like this. By late May 1982, the air war over the Falklands had reached a crescendo. Lieutenant Commander Nigel "Sharkey" Ward and his fellow Sea Harrier pilots had proven their skill, their jets' technology, and their daring in a conflict where they were consistently outnumbered. Yet even as victories mounted, the human cost and the unpredictable nature of war remained ever present. For Sharkey, one aircraft in particular would come to symbolize both his personal legacy and the indomitable spirit of the Sea Harrier program, ZA175. On the 21st of May 1982, Sharkey embarked on his third combat air patrol of the day. The South Atlantic sun glinted off the waves below as the Sea Harrier lifted from the deck of HMS Invincible. Every patrol carried the weight of responsibility to protect the fleet, defend the landing zones, and ensure the survival of every sailor and soldier. Intelligence reported a pair of Argentine daggers operating west of San Carlos, and Sharkey's squadron moved to intercept. The moment was tense. Radar contacts flashed, and every second demanded split-second decisions that would determine life or death. As the Sea Harriers closed in, the first pair of daggers were shot down by Sharkey's wingman, Lieutenant Steve Thomas. The exhilaration of success was immediate, but fleeting. Sharkey's attention snapped to a third dagger that had broken formation and was now diving toward him. In those moments, Training, instinct, and sheer courage collided. Sharkey executed a precise vertical climb, pulling the enemy aircraft off his tail, then rolled into a maneuver that forced the dagger to overshoot. ZA175 responded flawlessly, a testament to years of meticulous design and refinement. The engagement left no room for error. Sharkey's mind raced, calculating fuel, speed, missile lock, and evasive options all in real time. One misstep could cost the jet, the pilot, or the safety of the entire task force below. And then, as he lined up for a counterattack, a sudden burst of anti-aircraft fire erupted from the islands below, forcing him into a perilous low-level maneuver. The Sea Harrier's agility allowed him to slip through the threat, but it was a stark reminder that the dangers of combat extended beyond the skies. ZA175's air-to-air victory that day marked a historic moment. It was the jet's only confirmed kill. But in a broader sense, it symbolized the synergy of human skill and technological innovation that defined the Sea Harrier program. Sharkey Ward's ability to remain calm under fire, think strategically, and execute maneuvers with precision turned a potentially deadly encounter into a decisive triumph. His exploits that day would be studied by naval aviators for decades, a case study in courage, preparation, and tactical brilliance. The battles continued. Even after ZA175's historic mission, the air war remained relentless. Argentine forces, undeterred by losses, launched continued attacks on British ships and landing zones. Each mission was a test of endurance, resilience, and ingenuity. Pilots faced exhaustion, mechanical challenges, and the ever-present uncertainty of whether they would return safely. Yet the Sea Harrier squadron held the skies, providing crucial protection to the task force and allowing the amphibious landings to continue, ultimately shaping the outcome of the conflict. ZA175 once, just another aircraft in the squadron, became a symbol of the Sea Harrier's impact and Sharkey's leadership. Stories of its agility, its response under extreme conditions, and the skill of the man behind the controls spread throughout the fleet. For the pilots, it represented what could be achieved when training, technology, and courage intersected. For the Royal Navy, it was proof that even a small force, properly equipped and expertly led, could challenge and dominate a superior enemy. The lessons of the Falklands conflict extend beyond statistics and victories. The Sea Harrier program demonstrated the importance of adaptability in warfare, the value of innovation under pressure, and the decisive role of leadership. Sharkey Ward's heroics, exemplified by ZA175, highlighted the human element in combat, the decisions, sacrifices, and bravery that machines alone cannot replicate. Every dogfight, every patrol, and every calculated risk contributed to a narrative that remains compelling decades later. As the war drew to a close, the legacy of ZA175 and the Sea Harriers was cemented. 20 jets, flown by a handful of skilled pilots, it shaped the outcome of a war thousands of miles from home. Against overwhelming odds, their combination of human skill and cutting-edge technology provided a masterclass in naval aviation strategy. Sharkey Ward returned home a hero, but the story of ZA175 lives on, a reminder that courage, preparation, and innovation often determine the difference between defeat and triumph. Even now, decades later, historians, military analysts, and aviation enthusiasts study these missions, dissecting maneuvers, tactics, and decisions with meticulous care. ZA175, perched in its final display or in photographs, tells a story of what is possible when ingenuity meets determination. The Falklands War, often remembered for its political stakes and ground campaigns, also stands as a testament to the small but decisive role of a few courageous pilots in shaping history. The Sea Harrier and ZA175 remind us that history is not only written by the movements of armies, but by the skill and daring of individuals who rise to meet extraordinary challenges. Their legacy is etched not in monuments alone, but in the lessons of preparation, adaptation, and the courage to confront overwhelming odds. And as you reflect on these incredible stories of courage and innovation, consider the pilots who risked everything for their mission. Their heroism continues to inspire, reminding us that even in the smallest aircraft, the heart of a legend can soar.